Hello, 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 my beautiful friend. Congratulations on finishing up another process. We are now want to start the fifth process of schedule management in predictive projects. We're still in planning phase, guys, and this is the last process. I promise, okay? And the process's name is develop schedule. We finally want to develop our project's schedule, that timeline of the project. Okay, what did we do so far? The first process, plan schedule management. We came up with the how-to guide for schedule, which called schedule management plan. Second process, define activities. We broke down those WBS, those work packages, into smaller activities, and we came up with three outputs: activity list, activity attributes, and milestone list. Process number 3, sequence activities. Then we put those activities in a right order of doing them and created one important diagram, schedule network diagram. Then in the previous process, we estimated how long each activity take. And here we want to sum everything up, wrap everything up, and develop our schedule. Okay, let's start with mini terms of develop schedule process. Mini terms of develop a schedule process. Okay, what are ES, LS, EF, LF? Rings a bell? You saw these in the schedule network diagram. Okay, you were wondering what are ES, LS, EF, LF? Guys, ES stands for early start. Okay, this is the earliest time an activity can start. EF, early finish. This is the earliest time an activity can finish. LS, late start. This is the latest time an activity can start without delaying the project. LF, late finish. This is the latest time an activity can finish without delaying the project. Okay? Pause the video, go through them again 3 times. And if you still didn't understand it like 100%, that's no worries. Why? Because we're gonna explain it with an example in mini lessons. Okay, I just put it here to warm you up. Okay, now what's total float? New term, guys, and it is very important when developing a schedule. Total float means the other name is slack, or the other name could be flexibility. Guys, it's the total amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the project's finish date. The room, that extra time an activity have without delaying the project's finish date. Very, very important. Please pause the video and go through that line again, total float. Okay? And if you didn't get it, that's fine, because we're going to have comprehensive example in future mini lessons. Now, free float. There's a difference between total float and free float. Free float is the amount of time an activity can be delayed, same definition so far, without delaying the start of the next dependent activity or successor activity. The next activity is called what? Successor activity. Last one, previous activity is called predecessor activity. If this is the current activity, next one is successor, previous one is predecessor activity. So free float is the amount of time this activity can be delayed without delaying the start of the successor activity. Okay, but total float talked about the whole project's finish date. Next term, critical path. Very, very, very important. Again, we're going to cover it in our example, but remember this thing. In a schedule network diagram, guys, we're going to have different paths. Okay? Remember schedule network diagram? We had node A or box A, then B on the top and C on the bottom. And then after B, we had D, F, and then lastly G. For bottom path, we had C, and then I think E, and then G. Okay? So there are different paths to complete this activity, and we need to complete all of these paths, but some paths are longer and some paths are shorter. We call those longest path to complete an activity critical path. Okay, so any activity in that critical path has 0 total float. I know it is too much. Okay, I don't expect you to understand critical path right now. If you understand it, good for you, you're a genius. But I don't expect that. Okay, you have to understand it with an example. So this is just warming up. Okay, don't worry. So remember, guys, critical path is the longest path through the project schedule with 0 total float. Determines the earliest possible project completion date. Next term, precedence logic. Fancy term, but we already covered it, guys. What's precedence logic? It defines the order in which activities must occur based on their dependency relationship, okay? It tells which activity must finish or start before another can begin. For example, you must finish coding before you can start testing, okay? This is finish to start precedence. We covered it. Impact analysis. This is another general term that we're going to use in every part of the project, not just schedule. Impact analysis is the process of evaluating how a proposed change will affect the cost, schedule, scope, and overall performance of the project. For example, guys, if a task is delayed by 5 days, impact analysis checks whether the critical path extends or costs increase or not, or resources need adjustment or not. We assess the impact of, the effect of any change in the project on overall part of the project, okay? On cost, resources, quality, schedule, every piece of the project. This is called impact analysis. As I said before, we had lots of new terms. I don't expect you to understand all of them right now, okay? Just relax, smile. For now, let's have our mini goal for develop a schedule. Then we're gonna start our mini lessons and you're gonna relax and breathe smoothly when you understand all of these new terms with a beautiful example. Beautiful example. Awesome. Let's get our mini goals done. All right. Welcome to mini goal of develop schedule process. Guys, the stage is ready, okay? We have done everything related to schedule. Now it is time to hit the ball and score. Develop our schedule. By develop a schedule, I mean that we will know by calendar date what time each activity starts and ends. When we know start and end date for all of activities that we need to do for this project, we will know the final completion date of the project. Okay, this is develop a schedule. So we know for works that our employees, our team do, when do they start working on each work package or each deliverable or each activity. Those start dates and end dates by calendar. For example, they start working on activity X on January 1st, and this activity must finish in January 18th, for example. Okay, this is a schedule. So based on our resources, like do we have full-time resources or part-time? Are they skilled or not skilled? Considering different factors, we come up with schedule or timeline of the project. To do so, we use inputs, guys. We review some existing documents like what? Like a schedule management plan, like resource calendar, risk register, schedule network diagram, duration estimates, activity list, activity attributes, milestone list, EEF, OPA, lots of inputs. Then, to analyze, interpret, and transform those information to insights, we apply the right tools, techniques, models, and method. Lots of new tool and technique, guys. We're going to use critical path method, CPM, which is super important. Okay, CPM. We're going to use resource optimization, very important. We're going to use schedule compression, super important. We're going to use what if analysis, Monte Carlo. All of them are new. Isn't that exciting? I think we're going to have lots of fun, guys. And as a result of reviewing inputs, applying 5 or 6 new tool and technique, we're going to create some new schedule related documents. Like what? Like project schedule, like schedule baseline. We had scope baseline, that frozen list, remember? Now we have a schedule baseline, schedule data, project calendar. These are outputs of develop a schedule process. Have your coffee ready, okay? Let's start our mini lessons by inputs of develop a schedule process. All right. Look up there, guys. Schedule management in predictive projects, what phase? Planning phase. And the last process, develop schedule. Last process of planning, guys, develop schedule. And we're going to start off our mini lessons with, as always, inputs. Schedule management plan and activity list and attributes are the first batch of inputs. Why schedule management plan? Guys, when you're doing any process related to schedule, you have to review schedule management plan. For example, in a schedule management plan, it is mentioned that to do like critical path method, which is a tool and technique that you need to use to develop a schedule, use this software to do the CPM. Okay, the softwares, the techniques, all are mentioned in the schedule management plan. You first need to review that plan and how-to guide. That's why schedule management plan is an input. Activity list and attributes, you need them. Why? Because remember durations. What did we do in previous process? We estimated activity durations. Where did we store them? In one column of activity attributes. Okay, you need durations of each activity to develop a schedule. You're gonna start saying, okay, this activity need to be started in January 15th, but how long this activity will take? It is mentioned in activity attributes, in one column of activity attributes. That's why you need activity list and activity attributes as an input. Please feel free to read the example because I'm going to save some time, okay? Pause the video and read the example if you wish. The next one, schedule network diagram with duration. Guys, of course, this is an input. As I said before, to develop a schedule, one of the main tools and techniques that we use is called CPM. To do CPM, we need schedule network diagram. Okay, that's why schedule network diagram is an input to this process. And the third batch of inputs are resource calendar and risk register. Why resource calendar? Guys, we wanna assign calendar dates for each activity. We need to know which employees are available, when are they available, okay? Or when our required equipments are available. What are the holidays? These are all mentioned in resource calendar. Why do you need risk register? Guys, what's risk register? It includes the risks, those uncertain events that may affect our project. You need risk register because when we come up with draft schedule, guys, the first version of a schedule, and we get the first draft of completion date of our project, okay, we apply one overall contingency reserve based on number of risks we have about that about the schedule of the project. Okay, I know we applied contingency buffer for each activity in previous process. Remember, in estimate activity duration, we did reserve analysis. We applied some contingency reserve for each activity. But now here in this process, we will apply contingency buffer or reserve for all activities together. Okay, why? Because we want to be in safe side. That's why resource calendar and risk register are inputs to this process. And please feel free to read the examples. Now let's get into tools and technique and start our exciting journey when developing schedule. Let's get it done. Hello, my beautiful friend. Welcome to the probably one of the longest lessons of our tutorial. So please have your coffee, tea ready because we're going to have lots of fun. Guys, we are in tools and techniques of develop schedule, and the main tool and technique we use is called CPM, critical path method. And what's critical path method? Guys, it's a technique, okay, that helps us know when do we start activities and when do these activities finish. So it helps us know start and end date of activities. We know their durations, okay? We know duration of activities. We found out about duration in previous process. In this process, CPM helps us know the exact start and end date, okay, of these activities. And guys, finding start and end date of activities are not as easy as it sounds. Why? Because there are lots of dependencies. Because one activity depends on multiple activities or has relationship with multiple activities. So it is not as easy as it sounds. And guys, remember, in real projects, we use softwares like MS Project, okay? We do CPM, we apply CPM tooling technique in softwares, using softwares. That's why our job in real project is way easier. But here, since we're gonna do it manually, okay, we imagine that we only have activities A to G. Our project is very small project. We have if we complete activity A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it means we have completed our project. Okay, but in real life, we're gonna have thousands of activities. So this is the first assumption I want you to have in mind. Our project includes activities A to G. And guys, the main ingredient of CPM, the foundational input or data that CPM need, is our schedule network diagram. Remember, I said we're going to have lots of fun with SND, schedule network diagram, and this is where we're going to start working on SND. So to do CPM, we need SND. And here is our SND from our previous processes. And remember, we updated our SND in estimate activity duration processes with duration of each activities, okay? That red square. To apply CPM as a tool and technique, we need to be aware of some terms, guys. What are those terms? Number one, DU. We said that. DU stands for duration, okay? How long the activity takes. And usually the unit is days, guys, okay? Usually. If in a schedule management plan, it says that, hey, to do CPM, use hours, we're going to use hours. If weeks, we're going to use weeks. It really depends on project's complexity, size, preferences. But here, for this example, and for like most common unit, is days, okay? So duration means how long the activity takes, usually in days. We already have it from estimate activity duration process. For example, activity A takes 2 days, okay? So all of those red squares in the top middle is called durations, and we know the duration of all activities. ES is early start, guys. The earliest day you're allowed to start the activity. And guys, I want to ask you a question. Please think about it. We know our first activity to complete is activity A, okay? What do you think the ES, that yellow square top left, ES, okay? Early start. What do you think ES of activity A is? It's 1, guys. Why? Because our project starts in day 1, okay? So we put 1 as an ES of the first activity, okay? And guys, keep this in mind. In some textbooks or some of our colleagues, teachers, use 0 as ES of first activity. But softwares in real life, like MS Project or P6, use 1 as the ES of first activity. Which one makes more sense? Of course 1, because we don't have day 0. We have day 1 of working on something, okay? There is no day 0. So I prefer to use 1 as ES of first activity. Okay? So does it matter if we use 0 or 1? No, guys. If the question mentions that, hey, use 0, you should use 0. If it does not mention, use 1. So the result wouldn't change, guys. Okay? Because this 0 or 1 affects ES of all of those successor activities. So it doesn't matter if we use 1 or 0. It's your preferences, but learn to use 1, please, okay? Because I think it makes more sense because it's day 1 of starting the project. So this is very important, guys. ES of the first activity is 1. Okay? Now, what about ES of other activities? How do we calculate ES of other activities? Guys, for example, ES of activity B. Okay? What relationship activity B has with activity A? FS plus 1. What's FS, guys? Finish to start with 1 lag. Remember, I said lag is a positive number. So FS plus 1 between A and B means activity B starts 1 day after activity A finishes. Okay? So ES of activity B is EF of early finish of activity A plus 1. Plus 1 is that lag. I'm going to repeat it again. Don't feel overwhelmed, okay? Don't feel confused. It's easy, guys. If you think about it, it will be like piece of cake. So, what's the relationship between activity A and B, guys? I'm going to repeat it again, okay? It's FS plus 1. It's on top of that arrow. FS plus 1. We know FS. FS means finish to start. We have to finish activity A to start activity B. And we have 1 day lag, guys, plus 1. So we wait 1 day to start activity B. So FS plus 1 means we start activity B 1 day after activity A finishes. Same thing goes for activity C. We start activity C 1 day after activity A finishes. So we said activity B and C starts 1 day after activity A finishes. When does activity A finishes? That EF shows us the finish date of activity A, early finish. Okay, that EF. Now, we can say that ES of activity B and activity C equals EF of activity A plus 1 because we wait 1 day. Now, guys, one question. What's successor of activity A? Come on, think about it. Activities B and C. Successor means activities that come right after this current activity. What's predecessor of activity B? Activity A. What's predecessor of activity C? Activity A, because predecessor is activity that comes right before this current activity. Okay? Guys, the calculation of ES of activities B and C was easy. Why? Because they had just one predecessor. Activity A was the predecessor. But what about activity D and E? The predecessor of activity D is both activity B and C, because both of these activities come right before activity D. Also, the predecessor activities of activity E is, again, activities B and C, because both of these activities are predecessors. They come before activity E. Now, we said ES of successor activity is EF of predecessor plus 1. Yeah. Now, if we have two predecessors for one activity, which predecessors EF we use? The maximum EF. We use the maximum EF, guys. So let's wrap it up. ES of successor activities equals maximum EF of predecessors plus 1. I'm going to explain it again, okay? Don't worry, with numbers in maybe 5 or 10 minutes, okay? So don't worry about it. I'm just warming you up, okay? The next term is EF, guys. Early finish. The earliest day you'll finish if you start at ES. Because your end date, your finish date of activity depends on your start date. And it depends on duration, guys. How long this activity will take. So it's easy formula. EF of your activity equals ES plus duration minus 1. So ES plus duration minus 1. So guys, look at activity A, for example. If we say ES of activity A is 1, okay, EF of activity A equals 1 plus 2 minus 1. So 3 minus 1, EF of activity A will be day number 2. So we put 2 there, okay? But why we have minus 1 in the formula, guys? Now let's calculate with our fingers, guys. Activity A starts in day 1 and it takes 2 days to complete. So we work day 1 and day 2. 2 days, we work 2 days and complete activity A. So activity A will be completed in day 2, okay? This is why minus 1 exists, because that minus 1 makes us consider the day that ES happens, okay? That early start day is considered. We shouldn't avoid that. That minus 1 makes us consider that ES as a working day, okay? And still, if you feel overwhelmed, don't worry. We're going to have numbers, okay? I'm warming you up. The next term, guys, LS, late start. The latest day you can start without delaying the project. That's the formula, guys. LS equals LF minus duration plus 1. I don't want to get into that formula. Why? Because I'm going to explain it with numbers soon, okay? LF, late finish, the latest day you can finish without delaying the project. How do we get to LF? You're going to see, guys. TF, very, very important term. Total float. What did we say about total float, guys? How much the activity can slip. Slip means how much it can be delayed or start like later without delaying the whole project. And the formula to calculate TF is LS minus ES or LF minus EF. Okay, don't say, no, it's too much formula. Should I memorize? You're going to learn it. You don't need to memorize. If you memorize it, good for you. Okay, but we're going to learn it conceptually with numbers. Okay, so guys, this was just warm up to learn about terms we have in CPM. With numbers, everything will be cleared out. Now, let's get into assumptions we make to apply a tool and technique called CPM. All right, guys, let's continue CPM with assumptions. Okay, to use critical path method, we make some assumptions. What are those assumptions? Number one, we assume that all relationships between activities that are connected to each other are FS plus 1, finish to start plus 1. There could be, in real projects, there could be other relationships like SS minus 2 or SF plus 2 or I don't know, FF minus 5, any relationship that you can imagine. But for simplicity, we consider that all connections or relationships between all activities that are connected to each other are FS plus 1. For example, A and B has FS plus 1 relationship. It means that activity B starts 1 day after activity A finishes. That plus 1 is lag. We wait 1 extra day. If it was FS without plus 1, what does that mean? It means that activity B starts right after activity A finishes, in the same day that activity A finishes. Since we have plus 1, we wait 1 extra day. Okay, if it was minus 1, FS minus 1, what does that mean? It means that activity B starts 1 day before activity A finishes. So that lead and lag is very important. And also we consider that first activity's ES, activity A's early start is 1. We start our project in day 1. We talked about it. The next one, time units are days, guys, okay? We use one consistent unit for all activities, days. For example, activity A takes 2 days to complete. Duration of activity A is 2. Duration of activity C is 4. So activity C takes 4 days. Our unit is days, okay? In real project, it could be hours, weeks, month. But here, for simplicity, these are our assumptions. Guys, one thing to consider. What is predecessor of activity B? Predecessor, an activity that comes right before our current activity. So the predecessor of activity B is A. Okay? Awesome. So it means that B's start date only depends on A, because there's just one predecessor activity. But look at activity D, guys. Does activity D have only one predecessor or two predecessors? So activity B is straightly connected with an arrow to activity D. Also, look at activity C. Activity C is also connected with that vertical arrow to activity D. So activity D has two predecessor activities, which are activity B and activity C. Now, guys, what does this mean? It means that early start date of, or early start day of activity D depends on two previous or predecessor activities, not just B. It also depends on C too. Okay, since activity D has fs plus 1 relationship with activity B and fs plus 1 relationship with activity C, it means that activity D needs to start one day after both activity B and C finishes. That's why in previous slide, for formula of ES of successor activities, we use the term maximum of EF of predecessor activities. Because look at activity D, it depends on two activities. So maximum of EF of these two matters. So for example, activity B ends in day 8. And activity C ends in day 10. Can you start activity D in day 9? No. Why? Because activity D depends on both B and C. Both of them needs to be finished. So we consider the maximum finish date of these two, which is day 10 in our example, okay? So activity D can start in day 11. Maximum finish date of activity B and C is day 10. Day 10, we have one lag, plus one there. Day 11 is the start day of activity D. We're gonna resolve all of the concerns with real numbers. I just wanted to give you a sense of, okay, what happens if there are multiple predecessors for one activity? If there is just one predecessor activity, that's easy. But what if there are like multiple predecessors? Awesome. Now we know our terms, we know our assumptions. Let's get into different paths and find critical path. Let's get it done. All right, my beautiful friend, let's continue our CPM. What's the name of technique? Critical path method. So I think it is time to find our critical path. Guys, every single project has its own schedule network diagram, or SND. And here's our SND for our example. Okay, let's zoom on in our SND. Okay, our first activity is activity A, and last node or box is activity G. As you can see, A branches out into two paths, B and C. And then B branches out into paths D or E, or also C branches out in two paths E or D. Okay? What does these paths mean? It means that every SND has different paths, guys. Okay? To find critical path of your SND, you need to first write down and find out all available paths. What do I mean by path? I mean chain of connected or dependent activities from start to finish. The full chain is called paths. Okay? For example, the first path that we could see in our SND is A, then B, then D, F, G. This is full, complete sequence of activities from start to finish, from A to G. Okay, this is our first path. Our next path could be A, then again B. Instead of D, we go to E, and then G. A, B, E, G. This is our second path. Third path could be A, then C, okay, then D, go up to D, F, and G. This is our third path. Our fourth path could be A, C, then straight from E and G. Okay, This is our fourth path. So our schedule network diagram here has 4 paths. Guys, we as a project team, we do all activities, okay? So by path, I don't mean that our project team selects one path and work on that path. No, okay? These paths has nothing to do with our project team's duty, okay? Our project team do activity A, then half of team works on B and half of the team works on C at the same time. They do it in parallel. Then again, half of the team works on D, E, and then activity F, and finally activity G. So our project team complete all activities. We find these paths to find the project's duration, guys. Okay? So please differentiate between these two. We will do all activities. We found out paths to find our project's duration. Why do we need paths? So how can you find project duration? Guys, if, for example, activity B and activity C could be worked on in parallel and at the same time, we cannot just add duration of activity A with B, C, D, E, F, G, like add all of the durations and say, okay, this is our project's finish date or our project's duration. No. Why? Because some of the activities are being worked at the same time. For example, activity B and C could be worked at the same time, or D and E at the same time. Okay? That's why we need paths. Now, guys, the second step is for each path, okay, we sum up the durations of the activities. For example, for path A, B, D, F, G, the first path, we sum up the durations. What's the duration of activity A? 2 days. So 2 plus. What's the duration of activity B? 6 days. Plus. What's the duration of activity D? 9 days. That right, the square. Plus. What's the duration of activity F? 7 days. What's the duration of activity G? 10 days. So we add all of them. So what's the total duration of that path? 34 days. Okay. Now, next path, A, B, E, G. We add all of the durations, and the duration of that path is 21. Duration of third path is 32 days. Duration of the last path, A, C, E, G, is 19 days. Now, which one of these paths are our critical path? The path with the highest duration is our critical path. So, A, B, D, F, G, the first path, which has duration of 34 days, is our critical path for our example. Now, what does this mean, guys? It means that this path sets the earliest possible project finish date. So, the earliest possible project finish date is 34 days. So, critical path is the longest duration path that shows us the earliest possible project's finish date. Guys, another point about critical path. Any activities that are on critical path, so what activities are in our critical path? A, B, D, F, G. So C and E are not in our critical path. All activities that are in our critical path has TF of 0, total float of 0. So starting and finishing up activities that are in critical path is super important. We cannot delay start of these activities. There's no room, there's no slack, there's no flexibility. We find critical path because activities that are located on critical path are super important, needs more attention because we cannot delay them. Their total float is 0. What's total float? It's the amount of time we can delay one activity in a way that the project finish date won't change. Okay, this is called total float. And now we know that any activity that is on the critical path has TF of 0. Look at TF. TF is that green square on the bottom, middle bottom. That's TF. TF of, for example, activity A is 0. We put 0 there. TF of activity B is 0. But TF of activity C is Could be not 0, okay? Why? Because activities C and E are not on critical path. What does this mean? It means if any activity on critical path delays even slightly, whole project delays, guys. That's why it is called critical path, vital path, super important path. All activities on this critical path is super, super important. And guys, we have another term called near critical path. What's near critical path? It's the path that finish almost as late as the critical path. Look at path number 3, A, C, D, F, G. It takes 32 days to complete. Our critical path takes 34 days. So third path, A, C, D, F, G, is called near critical path. This is just another term that you need to be aware of, okay? Now, let's wrap it up. We have our SND. We zoomed on our SND. We find different paths. Then we find the duration for each path by summing up the duration of activities. Then we found the longest path. We named longest path as our critical path. Now we know that activities that are on our critical path are super important. We cannot delay starting them, okay? They have TF or total float of 0. Any delay on these activities delay our entire project, okay? These are the things and points that we need to consider. Now let's have a mini question, okay? Because we've learned a lot so far. We still have forward pass and backward pass. These are two techniques that we use to find out ESEF and LSLF. Okay? Awesome. Let's get our mini question done. Mini question. You are a project manager reviewing a draft schedule. Two paths finish on the same day, but one path has several discretionary lags while the other shows continuous 0 total float. Some team members claim the longer looking path must be critical, while others doubt the float values because of the lags. You must determine which path truly drives the project finish date. What should you do? A. Choose the path with the most activities since it carries more risk of delay. B. Identify the path with the earliest late finish date. C. Validate all dependencies and lags with the team, then confirm the path with 0 total float. D. Accept the scheduling tool's highlighted critical path without further review. What a great question. Please pause the video, try to come up with the right answer. Now that you have unpaused, let's go line by line. Guys, you have your first draft of schedule. And there are two paths. So our schedule network diagram has two paths, which finishes on the same day. So the duration of two paths are same. But there is some misinformation here. So dependencies and lags are not verified and validated well. See, one path has several discretionary lags while the other shows continuous 0 total float. Some team members claim the longer looking path must be critical, while others doubt the float values because of the lags. Okay? So there are some doubts about the lags, about the total float. The numbers that we have put there, the duration, the TF values in the SND schedule network diagram, they're not validated. Okay? There may be some flaws. Guys, the correct option, the most comprehensive and complete option is C. It says validate all dependencies and lags with the team, then confirm the path with 0 total float. What did we say about critical path? It's the longest duration path, and all of activities on that critical path has 0 total float. So that path has 0 total float. Okay? But before this, we need to validate the data we enter to our scheduling tool, the dependencies, the lags, all of these data we enter as an input to our scheduling tool needs to be reliable. needs to be validated. We sit with our team and validate dependency. We look at each activity and say, okay, is really A connected to B? Is there any lag? Is A connected to D or C? What's the relationship? So we validate our findings because there is a doubt in our team about these dependencies and lags. Okay, that's why option C is the most complete one. Let's read the description. Critical path equals path with zero total float, but only after verifying that dependencies and lags are valid. This is very important. We cannot just pour in incorrect data, incorrect input, and then our scheduling tool offers that, hey, this path is critical based on your input. So what if inputs are wrong and incorrect? Okay? So we need to make sure our inputs, our data that we enter are correct, validated, valid. PMBOK requires reviewing logic to ensure float is meaningful before identifying critical path. Validating lags and discretionary links prevents false critical paths or missing true ones. Okay. Why A is incorrect, guys? A says choose the path with the most activities. Guys, the higher number of activities does not mean that this path is the critical path. No, duration is the most important factor. Okay, longest duration, not the higher number of activities in the path. So critical path is not based on the number of activities. It is based on longest duration and zero float. Option B says identify the path with the earliest late finish date. This is just made up thing, statement. No, it has nothing to do with late finish date. So earliest late finish does not define the critical path. Float is the determining factor. Option D says accept the scheduling tool's highlighted critical path. No, guys. We need to validate our input, that data that we enter to a scheduling tool first. Okay? Tools only reflect the logic entered. If logic is flawed, the tool produces incorrect critical path. Awesome. Good question. Now let's continue our mini lessons with forward pass. All right, guys, let's continue our critical path method with forward pass. Forward pass is a method or a concept, okay, that we apply in critical path. We apply to find out ES and EF of all of the activities. Early start and early finish. Early start is that yellow square. Early finish is that blue square for all of the activities, okay? How does forward pass work? The first step, guys, we put ES. We set ES of the first activity to 1. We set it as 1, okay? Because our project starts in day 1. So early start of activity A, which is our first activity, is 1. Now, we know activity A will take 2 days. Okay, duration. We found out in the estimate duration activities process. Now, how do we calculate EF? We go to step 2. For each activity, guys, forward pass goes from left to right, okay? We find out ES and EF of activity A, then B and C, then D and E, and then F and G, okay? We go from left to right. This is forward pass. Now, step 2 says for each activity, when we move from left to right, ES, early start of the activity, equals maximum EF of all predecessors activities plus lag. Okay? If lag is not mentioned, it is 0. And EF of activities equals ES plus D minus 1. This is the formula. But before applying formula, let's go by finger, okay? Now, we have ES of activity A, which is 1. We set it as 1. We know the duration. So we start working on activity A in day 1, okay? It takes 2 days. So we work day 1, we work day 2, we complete activity A because it only takes 2 days to complete. So we complete activity A when? In day number 2. So EF, early finish of activity A, is day number 2. We used fingers to calculate. Now let's use formula and see if it works. Formula says to calculate EF equals ES. What's ES, guys? 1. ES of activity A is 1 plus D. What's duration? 2. So 1 plus 2 minus 1 equals 2. So both formula and finger calculation led to what number? 2. So we found out the EF of activity A as 2. Now let's go to activity B, guys. Activity B's ES, early start, okay? Let's go by finger first, and then we will apply the formula. Because I don't want you to remember and memorize formulas. I want you to go with concept, okay? Guys, when does activity B starts? What's the relationship between activity B and A? Fs plus 1. Am I right? Okay. What does Fs plus 1 mean? It means activity B starts 1 day after activity A finishes. When does activity A finish? In day 2. EF is 2. We start activity B 1 day after. So 2 plus 1, 3. So ES of activity B is 3. We found it with our fingers conceptually, guys. Let's go by formula and let's see if these two numbers match. Our formula says that ES equals maximum EF of all predecessor activities. Predecessor of activity B is just activity A. There's no other predecessor activities, okay? So EF of predecessor, EF of activity A is 2 plus lag. What's lag? 1, because Fs plus 1, that 1 is lag. So 2 plus 1 equals 3. Both formula and finger calculation led to number 3 for ES of activity B. Now, guys, let's calculate EF of activity B. To calculate EF of activity B, we add 3 and 6. We add ES plus duration minus 1. 3 plus 6, 9. Minus 1, 8. So 8 is the EF of activity B. Let's go to activity C. What's ES of activity C? It's the EF of predecessor activity. Predecessor activity of C is A. EF of A is 2. So EF of predecessor activity plus lag, which is 1. 2 plus 1, 3. So ES of both activities B and C are both 3. Let's calculate EF of activity C. We add that yellow square, which is ES of activity C, plus the red square duration. 3 plus 4 equals 7. Minus 1 equals 6. So EF of activity C is day 6. Now, it gets more interesting. We're going to calculate ES of activity D, guys. How many predecessors activity D have? It is 1 or 2? Come on, 2. Thank you. So activities B and C are considered predecessors of activity D. Okay? Predecessor means activities that come right before this activity, because B is connected to D with straight arrow, and C is also connected with this vertical arrow to D. So early start day of activity D depends on both B and C. Now, guys, let's go by formula. Formula says to calculate ES for each activity, ES equals maximum of EF of all predecessors. So now that we have 2 predecessors for activity D, what's the maximum EF? 6 or 8? 8 is bigger than 6. So 8 is maximum predecessor. I think you agree with me, okay? So maximum EF of all predecessor plus lag. The lag is 1. So 8 plus 1, 9. ES of activity D is 9. Okay? What's the duration of activity D? It's 9 also. So let's calculate EF of activity D. EF of activity D equals ES plus duration, 9 plus 9 minus 1. 9 plus 9, 18 minus 1, 17. So 17 is EF of activity D. Same thing goes for activity E. Okay, so guys, how many predecessors activity E have? 2, B and C. Let's calculate ES of activity E. ES equals maximum EF of all predecessor. What's the maximum EF of B and C? 8. 8 is greater than 6, so we select 8. 8 plus 1, 9. Okay, so 9 is early start of activity E. The duration of activity E is 3. Let's calculate EF of activity E. EF of activity E will be 9 plus 3 minus 1. ES plus duration minus 1. 9 plus 3 is 12 minus 1, 11. So 11 is EF of activity E. Let's go for activity F. How many predecessors activity F has? Only D, guys. Because E is not connected to F. E is straightly connected to G. Only D is connected to F. Let's calculate ES of activity F. So it's the predecessor activity plus lag. EF of predecessor activity plus lag. EF is 17, lag is 1, 17 plus 1, 18. So 18 is ES of activity F. How do we calculate EF? EF of activity F is ES plus duration minus 1. 18 plus 7 minus 1 equals to 24. Isn't that beautiful? Let's calculate the ES and EF of activity G. How many predecessors activity G has? 2, guys. F is connected to G. E is also connected to G. Okay, so to calculate ES of activity G, ES equals to maximum EF of all predecessors. What's maximum EF? 11 or 24. 24 is greater than 11, so 24 is the maximum EF. 24 plus 1, 25 is the ES of activity G. What's the duration? 10 days. 25 plus 10 minus 1 will be EF of activity G, which is 34. And now, guys, isn't that interesting? What was the duration of our critical path? 34. What's the EF of last activity here? 34. These two numbers should always match. If when calculating EF, your last activity's EF is a number other than critical path's duration, your math was wrong, guys. Okay, just consider this when doing forward pass. So this was forward pass, guys. So forward pass is a concept in critical path method that we go activity by activity from left to right to calculate ES and EF of all of the activities. ES of first activity is 1. We know that. We set it as 1. And then we know some formulas. You can do it also conceptually. I've taught you how to do it conceptually without formula. But when you do it like several times, you're going to learn, okay, to calculate EF, just add ES plus DU minus 1. To calculate ES of next activity, just add the lag to the EF of previous activity. So you're going to do it fast, okay, while you repeat and repeat and repeat. Awesome. Now let's have one mini question and then cover backward pass to calculate that LF and LS, which are two remaining squares, and we have TF also. Let's get it done. Let's get into our mini question. You are a project manager reviewing a network diagram your team created. One path shows activities A, B, C, D. The early start or ES of activity A is day 0. Activity A has a duration of 4 days. B has 3 days, C has 5 days, and D has 2 days. A team member insists that the early start of activity C is day 7 because that's when the team is available, while another insists C must start on day 8 because of a misread lag. No external dependencies or lags actually exist. To determine the early start of activity C, what should you do? A. Use the team's availability calendar to set the earliest possible start for activity C. B. Recalculate the forward pass by this formula, ES of activity C equals EF of activity B. C. Assume a one-day lag between B and C and set ES of activity C to EF of activity B plus 1. And D. Average the team inputs and set ES or early start of activity C to day 7.5 for planning purposes. Good question, guys. I want you to get the right option, pause it, think about the question, and then we're going to solve it together. Guys, look at the last two lines. It says no external dependencies or lags actually exist. So lag or lead is 0, guys. Okay? To determine the early start of activity C, what should you do? Now, as you can see, there are lots of data like early start of activity A or durations of all activities. Do we need those data? No. Why? Because in the options, question is not looking for exact early start of activity C. Question is looking for the right method, approach to use. So, what's the right approach? Let's go to option A. It says use the team's availability calendar to set the earliest possible start for activity C. Guys, team's availability calendar has nothing to do with early start date, okay? Resource calendars affect resource leveling, which we're going to learn very soon, but not the initial forward pass calculations, okay? Forward pass is based solely on precedence logic. So, forward pass calculation, which calculate ES and EF, has nothing to do with resource calendar, guys. Okay? Option B says recalculate the forward pass. ES equals EF. ES of activity C equals to EF of activity B. Is that correct? So what formula do you remember for ES of an activity? We said ES of an activity equals maximum EF of all precedence activities plus lag. Do we have lead or lag here, guys? The last two lines, no external dependencies or lags actually exist, so lag is 0. So ES of current activity, which is activity C, equals to EF of activity B. So option B is a correct option, guys. Let's read the description. Forward pass rule, ES of successor activity equals EF of predecessor activities when there is no lag, okay? So we did the calculations. If you want to do it yourself on paper and then match two calculations and see if you got it right or wrong. CPM is based on network logic, not availability opinions. Why C is incorrect? C says, assume this formula, ES of activity C equals to EF of activity B plus 1. This formula is correct when there is lag, guys. This is the formula we used in previous slide. In previous slide, in our assumptions, we said we assume that the lag is 1. But here the question says, no, do not assume any lag. As there is no lag or lead. So the lag is 0. The formula for option C is not correct. Option D says average the team's inputs. We never do that, guys. Okay? Different teams' opinion. No, we have only one schedule network diagram and there is one precedence logic and we're going to have one ES and EF for all of the activities. We don't do averaging. No, there's no such a thing. You bring everyone together and you make them agree on the ES and EF, the forward pass calculation, okay? Option B says recalculate the forward pass. So bring everyone together and calculate ES and EF of all of the activities. Move from left to right with whole team. Do not just average the inputs from different teams. So CPM calculations are deterministic, not based on compromise or averaging opinions. Awesome. Now it is time for backward pass. We had forward pass. Okay. We went from left to right. Now we want to come from right to left, from the last activity to the first activity. Let's get it done. All right, guys, let's continue CPM by backward pass. We did forward pass. We found out early start and early finish, those two top yellow and blue squares numbers for all activities. Now we're going to do backward pass. We're going to start from activity G and come to activity A and find out late finish LF and LS, late start of all of the activities, those light gray and purple color squares. Now guys, first step in backward pass. For every activity on the critical path, we copy the top numbers down, meaning LS equals ES and LF equals EF and TF equals 0. What does this mean, guys? So we know we had 4 paths and one of the paths was critical path. What did we said about critical path? We said those activities that are on critical path have total float of 0. What does this mean? It means delaying in start of any of these activities that are on critical path will delay our project. So there's no room to delay, okay? Total float or TF is 0 for those. Now, what activities are on critical path for our example? We know activity A, B, D, F, G. This was the longest path, 34 days, remember? So these activities are on critical path. So now for these activity, we do this for LF of these activities that are on critical path. We write down the EF number. So LF of, for example, activity G, which is on critical path, equals to EF of that activity, 34, 34. And for LS, we set that number as ES of that activity. So LS of activity G equals 25, which equals to ES of that activity. So ES equals to LS and EF equals to LF. We do it for all of those activities that are on critical path. We do it for activity F also. So the LF of activity F equals to EF of activity F, both 24. The LS equals to ES for activity F, both 18. We do it for activity D. We copy the numbers down. We do it for activity B. Copy the numbers down. 3, 3, 8, 8. We do it for activity A. Copy the numbers down. 1, 1, 2, 2. Okay? Now, the second step, we said those activities that are on critical path have total float, TF. That bottom middle green square is 0. So we put 0. That green square is total float of that activity. Okay? We put 0 for those activities that are on critical path. TF of activity G, 0. TF of activity F, 0, D, 0, B, 0, A, 0. Okay, awesome. Now, we do have 2 activities that are not on critical path. What are those activities? Activity E and activity C. How do we calculate the late finish and late start of these 2 activities? To calculate late finish of non-critical activities, okay, we apply this formula. Minimum of late start of all successor activities minus lag. I'm going to repeat again. Minimum of late start of all successor activities minus lag. So guys, let's go to activity E. Light gray box or square is late finish day. Okay, so let's calculate late finish day for activity E. With that formula, it means minimum of late start of all successor activity. What is the successor or what are the successors of activity E? It's only activity G. Okay, what's successor activity? Activities that come right after our current activity. Just only one. So there's only one successor activity, activity G. So activity G's latest start is what time? What day? 25. Okay, 25 minus lag. What is our lag? 1. 25 minus 1, 24. So 24 is late finish of activity E. Now let's calculate late start of activity E. Late start of activity E equals to late finish of activity E minus duration plus 1. What's the late finish of activity E? 24. What's the duration? 3. That red square is duration. Okay, so 24 minus 3 plus 1 equals to 22. So 22 is the late start of activity E. Now, let's calculate the late finish and late start of activity C. With the formula, guys, Late finish of activity C equals to minimum of late start of all its successor activities minus lag. Okay, let's zoom on activity C. How many successor activities does activity C have? 2. Good job. Activity D and activity E are successor activities of activity C. These two activities, because activity C is connected directly with that arrow to activity E and with this vertical arrow to activity D. So there are two successor activities for activity C. Now, minimum of late start of these successor activities. Let's see the latest start, that purple square for the successor activities of activity C. Latest start of D is 9. Latest start of E is 22. What's the minimum of 9 and 22? 9. Okay, so 9 minus lag. What's the lag? 1. 9 minus 1? 8. So 8 is late finish of activity C, that light gray. Let's calculate late start of activity C. Late start of activity C equals to late finish of activity C minus duration plus 1. So late start of activity C equals to, what's the late finish? 8. What's the duration? 8 minus 4 plus 1. 8 minus 4 equals to 4 plus 1 equals to 5. So 5 is the LS, or late start of activity C. Now, we're not done yet. There are two squares that we didn't fill up yet, okay? That green square of the E, which is total float of E, and green square of C, which is total float of C. Guys, the formula of total float, we mentioned the formula in the terms section of the CPM, but let's repeat again. So TF, total float of each activity, equals to late finish of that activity minus early finish of activity, or we could use another formula, late start of that activity minus early start of that activity. Let's do it for activity E. What's late finish of activity E? 24. What's early finish of activity E? 11. 24 minus 11, 13. 13 is the total float of this activity. Or let's use another formula. What's the latest start of activity E? 22. What's the earliest start of activity E? 9. 22 minus 9, 13. Same number. These number matches. Let's apply it for activity C also. Late finish of activity C is 8. Early finish of activity C is 6. 8 minus 6, 2. Late start of activity C is 5. Early start of activity C is 3. 5 minus 3, 2. So 2 is total float of activity C. And we know that total float of other activities which are on critical path is 0. Guys, we filled up all of these colorful squares. Okay, these colors are put by me. Okay, you wouldn't get color in like in your PMP exam. These are just for teaching you easily. But now we know what are the concepts of early start, duration, early finish, latest start, total float, late finish. Guys, once we're done with doing forward pass and backward pass and coming up with these findings, okay, now our software, our scheduling software, will go ahead and like start adding calendar dates. Okay, for example, if our project include activities A to G, it is a small project, we use software like MS Project, and our activities are A to G. And if our project starts on, let's say, April 1st, okay, our scheduling software will set activities A's start day for April 1st, 2027, for example, okay? And it will set the project's finish date 34 days later for, let's say, May 3rd of 2027. And all of these activities will have starting date, like calendar date. For example, activity B will start on April 3rd of the 2027. Activity C also will start on like April 3rd. Activity D will start on April 9, for example. It works like this, okay? We do forward pass, backward pass. We do CPM to come up with our schedule, to develop our schedule. Why do we need like TF? Why did we calculate TF? Why did we calculate that late finish, late start? Why do we need them? Guys, in projects, sometimes you have to, or you must, okay, start an activity later because your resource or your equipment is not available, okay? Total float shows you how much slack or how much flexibility you have to delay start of the activity. For example, activity C, okay, in a normal way needs to start in day 3, that early start, okay? But activity C has 2-day float. What does this mean? It means if we start activity C, if we delay start working on activity C up until day 5, our project will still finish in 34 days. Okay? It wouldn't delay the whole project because we had 2-day float. But we cannot do it with activity A, B, D, F, G because these are on critical path. TF of these activities are 0. There is no flexibility. But for activity C and E, especially E, 13 days of total float. Guys, in normal, like if resources are on time, if materials, everything is on time, the earliest time you could start working on activity E is 9. But since activity E has 13 days of float, it means you can postpone, you can delay working on activity E up until day 22, up until, for example, April 22nd of 2027. If your resources are not available, if supplier delayed, you have flexibility. You shouldn't be worried. Why? Because activity E is not on critical path and it has a float. You can play around. Your project would still finish in day 34. You shouldn't be worried. That's why we need LSTF, LF, ESDU, EF. Okay, guys? These numbers are important because our software signals you if something is not as planned. Okay, if you delay start working on activity that is on critical path, our scheduling software would be like beep, 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 beep. Hey, project will delay if you delay working on activity D. You should start working on activity D on day 9. It's day 10. You didn't start working. You haven't started working. So our project will delay. There will be like, instead of 34 days, if you start in day 10, we're going to have like 35 days. So these numbers are for this purpose, to play around. Awesome. This was a wonderful lecture and thank you very much for your patience. You're very smart, okay? I'm proud of you. And please continue. All right. Welcome to probably one of the most important lessons in schedule management in predictive projects. Guys, from this particular lesson, you may get 2 PMP questions on your final test. So I want your full attention. Don't be on your phone, okay? Promise me. We're gonna get it done together. Guys, what did we do so far? We completed our schedule network diagram, okay? We applied forward pass and came up with early start and early finish date, those colorful squares, remember? And we applied backward pass and came up with late start, late finish, and total flow, TF, of each activity. Now, guys, we have these findings, okay? As I said before, we pour or enter these findings into our scheduling software. But we need to remember one thing, guys. Who does the work? Or what do we need to do the work? We need resources, okay? What are resources? Resources are people, equipment, material, facilities. These are all called resources. Now, can a work be done when there is no resources to do it? No, obviously no. Okay, so the first tool and technique that we're gonna talk about in this mini lessons is resource optimization technique. Now, what is resource optimization technique, guys? Resource optimization technique helps us to adjust the timing of activities based on resource limitations and constraints. Guys, remember previous S&D that we worked on? We had activity A, and then B and C was after activity A in parallel, okay? Both of B and C had FS+1 relationship with activity A. What does this mean? It means these two activities we could start these two activities one day after activity A finishes. Now, I do have a question from you. Let's say for both of activity B and C, we need crane to do the activities, okay? And in our project, we only have one crane. Now, one crane cannot be in two places, okay? Cannot be available for both activity B and C. We need to do one of the activities first, and then the crane would be available for the other activity. So, our schedule network diagram, in our draft schedule network diagram, B and C were in parallel, start at the same time. Now, with this resource limitation, we can't do it in parallel at the same time. We need to shift one of these activities, okay? Resource optimization techniques helps us to do this, to deal with resource problems in our project, guys. Awesome. So, to wrap it up, resource optimization technique means adjusting the activity dates in the schedule so that no person, crew, or equipment is assigned to more work than they can actually handle at one time. So, when there is overbooking, double booking, over allocating, or when we assign, for example, 80 hours a week for one employee, these are resource problem, guys. We deal with resource problems by using resource optimization techniques. And if you're wondering, okay, Nav, we're in schedule. Why the hell are you talking about these the resources? Guys, schedule is highly tied to resources because our activities needs to be done by resources. If resources are double booked, it means our schedule is not realistic. Okay, we consider resource calendar, a document called resource calendar. Remember, it's a calendar that shows what resources are available when. So by considering resource calendar, we make our schedule realistic. Now, whenever we hit a constraint, a limitation, a resource problem, we apply resource optimization techniques. Now, there are two sub-techniques, okay? We have resource leveling, guys, and we have resource smoothing. What's resource leveling? Let's start with resource leveling. Guys, in resource leveling, we move activities, okay? So no one or equipment is double booked, even if it makes the project finish later, okay? So when do we use this? When resources are limited and you cannot add more resources. Now, guys, one question from you, okay? We had a path in our schedule network diagram called what? Critical path. What was critical path? Critical path had some characteristics. One of the most important one is our critical path shows the project's duration. This is the longest path that shows our project's duration. Am I right? And the second characteristics, we said activities that are on critical path has total float of 0. What do I mean by total float? I mean these activities does not have slack, room, or flexibility to be able to shift these activities, okay? We must start these activities at the assigned date. There's no room to shift these activities and start them later. Total float 0 for these activities. Now, for these activities, guys, when we face and hit resource problem, we use what? Resource leveling. We don't care about the finish date, okay? We must shift these activities that are on critical path so we could be able to do these activities. So by shifting them, we know that our critical path will be now longer. So our project's finish date will be longer and shift. So resource leveling okay? Means adjusting the timing of activity, and it will definitely change the project's finish date and critical path. Now, let's elaborate resource leveling with an example. For example, guys, let's say we have two activities, ICU framing, okay, which have a duration of 10 days, and ER framing, for example, which have a duration of 8 days, okay? Both of these activities are scheduled to start on same day, for example, June 1st, okay? But there is only one crane available for framing. Both of these activities need a crane, and there's only one crane available. Now, we apply resource leveling here, okay? What do? We make like ICU framing happens first, June 1st to June 10th, because it has a 10-day duration. Now, and ER framing starts after, so June 11th to June 18th, because it has an 8-day duration. What's the result? The project now finished later, but the crane is used realistically. This is how resource leveling helped us, guys. Okay, we faced a resource limitation. We moved one of the activities, okay, and it affected our project finish date, but we had to do it. We didn't have any option. There is no slack, guys. The second technique is called resource smoothing. This is an interesting technique. What's resource smoothing, guys? We rearrange activities within their available float or slack so the project finish date does not change. When do we use it? When the project end date is fixed, but you want to avoid overloading resources. Guys, we have some activities that are not on our critical path and have total float more than 0. Okay, for example, 3 days total float or a week total float. Okay, so for non-critical activities, when we face a resource constraint or limitation, we apply what? We apply resource smoothing. We adjust activity start date in that room, in that flexibility, in that slack, in that float, okay? Because these activities have total float, so we can play around. And since these activities are not on our critical path, our project date won't like shift to the later date, guys. Isn't that interesting? So let's elaborate with an example. Let's say both ICU painting, this is our first activity, which take 5 days, and ER painting, which also take 5 days, are scheduled for June 15th to 19th to do. Okay, now using the same 2-person painting crew, we have just 2-person painting crew. Okay, both like these 2 persons are assigned to do 2 activities for the same day. Okay, this is a resource limitation. One team cannot be in 2 places in ER and ICU at the same time. Both of these activities are scheduled for June 15th to 19th. Okay, and remember, if you're saying, okay, they can do part-time, no. Okay, because if they do part-time instead of 5 days, it will take 10 days. So again, our schedule will be affected. So we consider full-time, guys. Okay, don't be like smart and say, hey, Nav, why don't they do it part-time and be available at 2 places? You don't be smart. Now, this creates what? Over-allocation, overbooking. When one resource is booked for 2 activities at the same time, it is called overbooking, over-allocation, and we don't like it, guys. No, 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 no. Okay, this is resource problem. We apply one of the techniques, resource leveling or resource smoothing. If these activities are on critical path, we apply resource leveling. If these are on non-critical path, or if these activities are non-critical, we apply resource smoothing if they have float. Okay, now let's continue our example. Our ER painting activity has 7 days of float. With a smoothing, the PM shifts ER painting to June 22nd to 26th. What's the result of doing this, guys? The crew is not overloaded now, and the overall hospital project still finishes on the same final date. Why? Because our second activity, ER painting, had a float. When there is a float, you can play around without affecting the project's finish date. Let's wrap it up, guys. Whenever you face resource problem, apply resource optimization techniques. Resource leveling is applied on critical path activities, guys. It will affect our project's finish date. Resource smoothing are applied on what? On non-critical activities, when there is a float, when an activity has float. And resource smoothing won't affect our what? Our project finish date. So whenever the schedule, our project schedule is fixed, I mean, your sponsor tells you, hey, you're not allowed to like change the project's finish date. Do something when there is a resource problem. You apply resource smoothing, guys. Awesome. Yes, I know it was too much, too many information, and you deserve a very good mini question. So let's get it done together. All right. Let's get into our mini question. You are a project manager reviewing the latest resource histogram for your project. The schedule shows that although the project is currently on track to meet the approved finish date, one key role experiences significant workload spikes in certain weeks while having light workload in others. All overloaded activities are on non-critical paths with available float, and the sponsor has clearly stated that the project completion date and key milestones cannot slip. What should you do? A. Apply resource leveling. B. Apply resource smoothing. C. Crash the schedule by adding more resources to overloaded activities. D. Fast track by overlapping more activities on the critical path to create additional buffer. What a question. And actually, I remember I got almost same question on my PMP exam. So here is the type of question you may get from resource leveling, resource smoothing, resource optimization techniques. And guys, please pause the video, try to come up with the right option. And if you didn't, that's okay. We are learning, guys. Okay, let's go line by line. Let's learn something. You're a project manager reviewing the latest resource histogram. Guys, what's resource histogram? Resource histogram is a bar chart. Okay, the x-axis is time, and the y-axis is could be number of resources, number of hours, anything. Okay, related to resources. And resource histogram shows the, like, if the x-axis is time, it shows, for example, week 1, week 2, week 3 till week n, okay? And it shows, okay, how many resources we need for, like, week 1, how many for week 2, how many for week 3. And our resource histogram shows that one key role, okay, one employee, one team member is experiencing workloads, like high workload in certain weeks. For example, for 1 week, that employee is assigned to do 60 hours of work, okay, in that bar chart. In another weeks, like 20 hours, it says some weeks are lightweight workload, okay? So it's a problem. What problem it is? It's resource problem, guys, okay? Overbooking, over allocation, over allocation. Okay, so when we have a schedule, the whole concern is about schedule, and in that schedule the problem is resource, over allocation, overbooking, workload. These are the terms that you're going to see, you're going to face when dealing with schedule and resources. Okay, when you have a problem with resources and it will affect the schedule, you need to use one of those resource optimization techniques, smoothing or leveling. So it's either A or B. Which one do you think is the right option? The right option is, guys, B, resource smoothing. Why? There is a critical line there. Please go to the last 3 lines. All overloaded activities are on non-critical path with available float. Okay, guys? So when an activity has float, so you can play around, that activity has flexibility, has slack. You can start it later. When you start that later, the workload of that key role will decrease, will reduce. So when an activity has a float and you can play around the start date of that activity, it is called resource smoothing. Resource leveling applies on critical path activities. Guys, the question clearly states that the activities are on non-critical and have float. That's why B is correct. Let's read the description. Resource smoothing keeps the project finish date and critical path unchanged. Remember, resource leveling changes the project finish date. Resource smoothing does not change the project finish date. And a sponsor has clearly stated that the project completion date and key milestones cannot change or slip, guys. Okay, this is another criteria that you need to consider. And remember, leveling changes, smoothing does not change the finish date. Leveling changes, smoothing does not change. Okay, just try to remember it with a little bit of dance or something, or music. And resource smoothing adjusts non-critical activities within their flow to reduce resource peaks. Exactly matches the constraints. Okay, optimize usage without changing the date or critical path. Why A is incorrect, guys? A was resource leveling. It will change the project finish date. That's why it is incorrect. C, crash the schedule. You're going to see crashing and fast tracking in the next lesson. These are called compression techniques, schedule compression techniques. Okay, guys, we use schedule compression techniques when the problem is deadline, the project's finish date. Here, the problem is resource. So we use resource optimization techniques. Okay, we need to differentiate between these two, and you will when we get to the schedule compression techniques. And D says fast tracks by overlapping more activities. Fast tracking is another schedule compression techniques that we're going to cover. But fast tracking, again, we use fast tracking or crashing. These are when the problem is our project's deadline, okay, not the resources. Awesome. Now let's continue our mini lessons with the another important tool and technique, which are called schedule compression techniques. Let's get it done. All right, guys, let's continue our mini lessons. But before starting, one of the most important tools and techniques that are related to the schedule, the fact that you're here, you're still continuing, makes me proud, and you should be proud of yourself. Why? Because you're determined to do this, to get your PMP, okay? So feel confident, be proud of yourself, okay? Say, hey, I'm doing wonderful, let's continue. Because, you know, it is really hard to be consistent, to continue. Everybody can start something, but only 2 to 5% of people complete and finish that something. And you will be one of those, okay? So thank you very much for continuing. And let's get back to our mini lesson. Guys, we talked about resource optimization techniques, and we said whenever we face a resource problem, by resource problem, we meant what? We meant resource over allocation, overbooking, double booking, or resource workload. Okay, these are resource problem. We use resource optimization technique, leveling, smoothing. Now, guys, let's say sponsor comes to you as a project manager and say, hey PM, there's a problem. We have to finish our project earlier. So instead of, let's say, 6 months, we have to finish it in 5 months. Do it for me. Make it happen. You shouldn't say, hey, I can't. No, you have some techniques to do that, guys. Okay? So whenever you face a time problem, by time problem, I mean whenever a stakeholder or sponsor wants you to finish the project earlier, you apply schedule compression techniques. So schedule compression techniques are used when the problem is time. Okay, you adjust the schedule because you must finish earlier without reducing scope. Okay, you can't say, okay, I want create 20% of the approved scope, then we will finish it earlier if you sacrifice some part of the scope. No, without sacrificing a scope, you have to make it happen. It's your job. You're getting paid to do that. And you apply 2 techniques, guys. Schedule compression techniques are 2, crashing and fast tracking. What's crashing, guys? Crashing means we assign extra resources to critical activities so they finish faster. Okay? Why critical activities, guys? We said activities that are on critical path are very important. Okay? So our critical path shows our project's duration. We have to add more resources to activities that are on our critical path to finish them earlier. When we finish an activity that is on critical path earlier, it means our project duration becomes like reduces and we can finish it earlier. We can finish our project earlier. So crashing means adding extra resources. For example, guys, we have an activity called ICU drywall installation, which is on critical path. This activity normally takes 5 days with one crew. Okay? The PM applies crashing and hires an extra drywall crew. So 2 teams work in parallel. Okay? What's the result? What's the result of crashing now? Now, drywall finishes in 3 days instead of 5 days. Drywall was on critical path. So it means our project now finishes 2 days earlier because we applied crashing. We hired extra resources. But I think you agree with me that there is one downside. There is one problem with the crashing. What's the problem? Cost, guys. When you hire extra labor, extra resource, you need to spend money. So if money is not a problem in your project, you can apply crashing. But in the PMP question, you may, it is really tricky, guys. Sometimes the question may say, hey, money is not a problem. What schedule compression technique you use? You instantly should go to crashing. But sometimes the question indirectly says, hey, we have fixed budget. Now what, and you have to finish the project earlier. Now what schedule compression technique you use? You use fast tracking. What's fast tracking, guys? Fast tracking means starting an activity before its predecessor is fully complete. Okay? This is current activity. In our schedule right now, activity B is scheduled after activity A is finished. Okay? We have to the relationship is FS plus 1, for example, or FS. Okay? We have to finish activity A to start activity B. Now, sponsor comes to you and say, hey, we have to finish the project earlier. You have to apply one crashing or fast tracking technique. And the sponsor also says, hey, we don't have extra money, so do something about it. You apply fast tracking. What does this mean? It means if we could do this successor activity earlier, so we could overlap these 2 activities, it means we are starting this activity earlier, not just after activity A finishes. We're starting it earlier. It means our project duration could finish earlier. Okay? So we start successor activity before predecessor, which is this activity, finishes. So these 2 overlap, guys. Leads, remember? Overlap. For example, original plan says finish drywall, which is 5 days, then start painting, which takes 4 days. Okay, this is our original plan. These 2 activities, finishing up these 2 activities, takes 9 days. Okay, now sponsor comes to you and says, hey, finish it earlier. PM overlaps them. What does this mean? It means painting begins 2 days before drywall is finished. What's the result? The combined work takes 7 days instead of 9. We didn't add extra resources here, guys. Okay, we just started activity B earlier. Activity B and A now overlaps. Okay, when this activity starts earlier, it means our project shifts this way, like we finish it earlier. Okay, and we cannot do it, of course, for all activities. Some activities should be done in that order, should be done after certain activity is finished. But some of the activities can be done in parallel. So we work on that activity and apply fast tracking. Guys, what do you think the problem with fast tracking is? The problem with crashing was extra cost. What do you think the problem with fast tracking is? The downside is when we do fast tracking, when we apply fast tracking, we may need to redo the work. there is a quality risk, guys. Okay? So we overlap things. Okay, that's cool. But we're rushing things up, guys. We're fast tracking, rushing things up. Our quality, okay, standards won't meet sometimes. It's just a risk, okay? We're not certain about it. This may happen. So the problem with fast tracking is quality risk, the risk of rework or redoing something. Awesome. Let's wrap it up, guys. So schedule compression techniques are used when a sponsor or stakeholder wants from you that, hey, finish the project earlier. Now, if you have extra money, apply crashing. If you don't have extra money, apply fast tracking. Resource optimization techniques are when you face resource problem, guys. Overloading, overbooking, double booking, over allocation. These are resource problem, okay? So please differentiate between schedule compression techniques and resource optimization techniques. And these two lessons that we covered are super important, and you will definitely get a question on your PMP exam. And if you're saying, okay, Nav, come on, please give me a mini question about the schedule compression techniques, your wish is my command. Let's get it done. You are managing a product launch project for a retail chain's new self-checkout system. The project is slightly ahead of schedule, but you're informed that the vendor responsible for the payment gateway integration will miss their delivery date. Without this integration, final system testing cannot proceed, putting the project at risk of missing the official launch window. To recover, the team suggests crashing this delayed work. What is the most likely outcome if you choose to crash this deliverable? A. The project will accelerate but may face new risks or higher costs as a result of the crashing effort. Good option. B. Project costs will remain stable, but the team will need to perform additional rework after launch due to cutting corners. Good option. C. Project risks will decrease because the team is addressing the delay proactively through resource reassignment. And D. Warranty obligations will increase because vendors typically reduce quality when crashing tasks to meet deadlines. Good question, guys. I want you to pause, like always, and get the right answer for me, please. Now, unpause and let's get it done. Let's go line by line, guys. You are managing a product launch for a retail chain. You're managing a project. The project is slightly ahead of schedule. Good sign. Ahead of schedule. You're doing your job good. But now, you get information that, hey, vendor responsible for the payment gateway integration will miss the delivery date. Okay, this when an activity is will be done later due to vendor delay, it means it will affect your project schedule, as the question states. Question says, hey, this missing deadline will affect the project's launch or finish date. Okay, launch date. Now, the team. The question does not ask, hey, what schedule compression technique to use to make the project finish at the promised date. The question says, hey, use crashing, okay? But the question is asking about consequences of using crashing, okay? What's the downside of using crashing? We talked about it. Option A, I hope you got it right, guys. Option A says the project will accelerate, so crashing will make the project finish earlier, okay? Accelerate the project, but may face new risks or higher costs. Crashing means hiring new people, guys, adding more resources. To hire new people, you need to pay, so add costs, okay? As a result of the crashing effort. Now, let's read the description, guys. Crashing involves adding resources or paying for faster work to reduce the schedule time. This typically leads to increased cost and potential new risks. What are the potential new risks? Quality issues, coordination problems, resource overload, okay? When we have new team, guys, when we hire new people, You need to do you need to do onboarding. You need to coordinate this new team with the old team. This coordination has a risk, guys, or the quality of the performance of new team would not be as good as the old team. So these are new risks, guys. Okay. And the crashing is a time cost trade-off. You gain time, but you may lose cost efficiency and increase project risk. It's a trade-off, guys. To gain something, you need to lose a little bit of something else. Now, to gain time, you want to finish early. To gain time, you lose cost. Okay, so it will add extra cost. Why B is incorrect, guys? Project cost will remain stable. Incorrect, guys. You're doing crashing, you hire new resources, you need to pay them, so project cost will increase. Option C says project risks will decrease. No, project risks will increase. Okay, crashing may increase risk, not reduce it, especially when rushing complex integrations or relying on new resources. Guys, we don't know about quality of new resources. They may not be as good as the old resources. So there may be, we're talking about risks, okay, may happen. We're not saying it will definitely happen. No. There may be some quality risks by doing the crashing compression technique. And D says warranty obligation will increase because vendors typically reduce quality. No, vendors won't reduce quality, guys. These may happen, okay? So option D, warranty changes are a contractual issue, not a direct consequence of crashing. Vendors' crashing tasks does not necessarily alter warranty terms, okay? Awesome. This was a very, very good question. Now let's continue tools and techniques of develop schedule process. Let's get it done. All right. Look up there, guys. A schedule management in predictive projects. What phase? Planning phase. What process? Develop schedule. And we will continue tools and techniques of this process. In this mini lesson, we're going to have 3 tools and techniques, guys. The first one is what if analysis. Now, let's recap. What did we do so far? So we worked on our schedule network diagram. Okay, we did forward pass and backward pass and find early start, early finish, late start, late finish, total float, and duration was already known. So we filled up those colorful squares, remember? Then we learned about resource optimization techniques. So whenever the project hits or faces a resource problem like overbooking, for example, we apply one of the resource optimization techniques. And then we learned about the schedule compression techniques whenever the problem is the project's deadline finish date, and we're going to have earlier finish date, for example, we apply schedule compression techniques. Now, here we have what if analysis. What's what if analysis, guys? So it's a technique where the PM tests different scenarios, okay? Delays, extra crews, bad weather, risks, every scenario, different single scenario, to see how the schedule would change, okay? Now, guys, you as a project manager, you facilitate a meeting, okay? You have your schedule, like first draft of a schedule network diagram. Now, one of your team members or stakeholder tells you, hey, what if one crew is not available to do the job? What happens to our project schedule? So with this what if question, you run a simulation using software schedule, okay? You find out that, okay, if one crew, for example, drywall installation crew, is not available for a week, our project finish date will, for example, move 4 days. So our project will finish 4 days later. Okay, there will be a delay. Now, what do you do with this finding? This is what if analysis finding. What do? You provide this finding to project manager and project sponsor and tells them, hey, it is time to make an informed decision. Should we add, for example, buffer to our schedule? Should we like make our schedule based on this risk? Because if this risk occurs, okay, our project will delay. Should we just consider this risk and plan based on this current risk? Or we will deal with this risk whenever it happens, like our current schedule network diagram is fine. Let's not change anything. Okay, so what if analysis gives you some findings, some impacts, and then the project team decides what to do. Should they like crash some activities? Should they just accept the delay? Will we have new, for example, a critical path when this scenario happens? So these are all findings to help the project manager to have an informed decision. Let's elaborate with an example. Let's say our draft schedule, original schedule, says that ICU unit deliverable finishes in 30 days. Okay. Now the PM runs a scenario. What if drywall delivery is 3 days late? This is a scenario, what if scenario. Now with this what if scenario, our schedule software will run the tiny simulation, okay, considering this scenario. The result will be this deliverable finish date slips to 33 days instead of 30 days. Okay. Another scenario, what if we add a second flooring crew? What happens to our project finish date? The result will be ICU finish date improves to 28 days. Okay, so we apply two what if scenarios right now. Now, the PM now knows which risks could delay the hospital and what options exist to recover time. So we run what if analysis before the execution. We prepare our project team for different scenarios. Okay, we know what happens, for example, if those risks actually occur. We are prepared because we did what if analysis in the planning stage of our process. Now we are prepared. We have a response plan to act when that risk occurs. Okay, so remember guys, what if analysis itself doesn't directly change the schedule. Okay, it gives the project manager the insight to decide whether to adjust the draft schedule before baselining or not. Okay, what if analysis just gives some findings to project manager. Now project manager, team, and sponsor decides if they need to adjust that draft schedule network diagram, that draft schedule or not, based on these findings. Now, the second tool and technique is Monte Carlo. This is an advanced simulation technique, guys, okay? So how does Monte Carlo work? In just normal schedule network diagram, guys, each activity has duration like 5 days, 10 days, okay? Now, how does Monte Carlo works? We, as a project team, we give a range for each activity, okay? For example, instead of saying activity A takes 5 days to complete, we say the best case scenario, activity A will be finished in 3 days. Worst case scenario, 8 days. Most likely, like 5 days. Now, different inputs for activity A. We do it for all activities, and we pour these inputs, these ranges into the Monte Carlo simulation, like the software. Now, our system, our software runs tens of thousands of simulations, okay? And the result is probability distribution, guys. S-curve. You're going to see the curve in other parts of our tutorial. I didn't include it here, but consider like probability distribution. What's that probability distribution? For example, guys, our Monte Carlo will run 10,000 simulation on the ICU schedule, okay? The results will show that, hey, 50% chance ICU ready in 30 days. 80% chance ICU ready in 32 days. 95% chance ICU ready in 35 days. Now, the PM shows these findings to a sponsor. Now, I do have a question from you. Should you base your planning on 50% chance of one thing happening, or like 80% or 95%? The more certain you are about a date, about a cost, okay, the better the planning is, okay? So instead of planning everything on just 50% chance, we plan everything on 95% chance. And Monte Carlo simulation gives us this benefit, okay? Monte Carlo simulation says, hey, do not plan based on 30 days. Just assume your project finish date is 35 days, because the simulation showed us that there is 95% chance the project will finish in 35 days, not like 30 days. So guys, our normal schedule and network diagram showed the project will finish in 30 days, okay? Now, we ran simulation, Monte Carlo simulation, and Monte Carlo simulation showed us that, hey, that 30 days you came up with, there is only 50% chance that the project will finish in 30 days. There is 95% chance that it will finish in 35 days. Now, what do? You plan everything on that 35 days because we are more certain about 35 days, 95% chance. That initial 30 days was like 50% chance. So when you consider a scenario with more probability, your planning is more realistic, guys. Monte Carlo simulation helps you to have a more realistic planning, a more certain finish date, because it considers different scenarios and runs tens of thousands of simulations. And we're going to have Monte Carlo in, for example, risk part of the project, cost part of the project. That's why I don't want to get into more details of Monte Carlo, okay? You're going to see curves and everything about it in future parts of tutorials. So just consider Monte Carlo as the very advanced simulation technique. The last tool and technique is critical chain method, CCM. What's critical chain method, guys? Now, in a normal schedule network diagram, what technique we applied, guys? CPM, critical path method, okay? We considered that our resources are unlimited, okay? So, and we came up with a schedule network diagram. We came up with those early start, early finish, late start, late finish, total float, with this assumption in mind that, hey, our resources are unlimited. There is no overbooking. There is no limitation like resource shortages. Now, critical chain method, okay, adjusts or adopts or changes that CPM, critical path method, okay? It's a critical path method, but it considers resource calendar. It considers the resource constraints, limitations. Okay, so critical chain method is an updated version of critical path method. Critical path method considered unlimited resources. It didn't consider resource constraint, but critical chain method considers resource constraint. Okay, it is the updated version. So critical chain method is scheduling technique that builds the project schedule by considering resource constraints and adding buffers to protect the critical chain, the longer sequence of resources, and etc. Guys, remember in estimate activity duration process, we said, hey, there are some risks for some activities, okay? Let's add some buffer, contingency. Remember contingency buffer. Like if an activity finishes in 5 days, okay, but this activity has a very critical risk assigned to this activity. So instead of 5 days, add 2 days as buffer. So consider the duration of that activity 7 days. We add buffer to be in a safe side. Now, critical chain method says, hey, you know what? Do not add a contingency buffer or reserve to each activity. Instead, let's add contingency buffer to whole project, to whole activities at once. Let's elaborate with an example. Imagine you're building a schedule, okay? But tasks depend on people and resources, not just the order of tasks. There are people and resources. Now, instead of giving every task extra time, you put one big buffer at the end of the chain of tasks, okay? This way, if small delays happen in individual tasks or activity, they don't push the whole project late. The buffer absorbs them. For example, instead of saying task A gets 2 extra days, task B gets like 2 extra days, task C gets 2 extra days, we say, hey, task A, B, and C share one 6-day buffer at the end. It adds buffer to whole activities, to all of activities at once. This is critical chain method. Okay? So guys, to wrap it up, critical chain method considers 2 factors. 1, resource limitation and constraints, okay? It updates our CPM with considering like resource calendar. And two, it adds buffer to all activities. These are two changes that critical chain method CCM applies to our normal CPM tooling technique. Awesome. Now let's continue our mini lesson with outputs of develop schedule. Let's get it done. Hello, my beautiful friend. Let's continue develop schedule process with outputs of this process. And as you may guess, the first output is project schedule, a document called project schedule. This document stores information about start date and end date or finish date of all activities. By date, I mean calendar date. Okay, we assign calendar date to all of these activities, and it can be stored in two formats. These two, it is not limited to just these two formats. Okay, for your project, based on your team's preferences, it can have different formats, but these two are most common ones. Number one, the table like this, or number two, the chart like this. Let's go to that table, guys, first. This table could have different columns like ID, like activity's name, planned date, planned start date, planned finish date, duration, actual start date, actual finish date, some extra notes. Okay, these are common columns that each project schedule may have. And the chart is called Gantt chart, guys. The name is Gantt chart. Okay, it's a graphical bar chart that shows project activities over time. Okay, the horizontal axis or x-axis is what? Is time. And those charts, depending on the duration of each activity, those charts could be short or long. And why some project teams use Gantt chart? Because it is, when we use charts, guys, it is easy on eyes, okay? Stakeholders are lazy to go through tables, okay? They prefer like simple charts like this. For example, if you zoom in on chart, you will instantly know that, okay, activity B and C overlaps. You can easily find out the start date and finish date of activity B. And you can also know that, okay, activity like D and E overlaps also. Activity F happens after activity C or D. I mean, you can instantly grasp some findings and insight from Gantt chart. But both of these, like table and chart, includes same information, okay? It is really depend on your team's preferences. The most important thing, guys, as a result of applying those tools and techniques like critical path method, like resource optimization, compression technique, and then Monte Carlo, what if analysis, CCM, okay? Result of doing all of those, applying those tools and technique is a document called project schedule. And remember, this project schedule is living document, guys. Okay, see that AS and AF, that's actual start date and actual finish date. Okay, when we come up with this first draft, this is project schedule draft. Okay, we show it to who? To sponsors, to those key stakeholders and decision makers. Okay, we show them, and once they approve this project schedule, okay, this project schedule will become what? You're going to see it in the next mini lesson, so stay tuned. Okay, guys, I was telling that we provide the first draft of project schedule and give it to project team and key decision makers. And once project sponsor and key decision makers, the people who pay us, okay, approve this project schedule, that project schedule becomes what? Becomes schedule baseline. It will be freezed from now on. Remember scope baseline, guys? It was our promised list of work and deliverables. Now, schedule baseline is our promised start and end date for each activities or milestones or deliverables. schedule baseline is official promise of what the schedule should look like. So later you can track actual performance versus the plan, okay? If things go off track during execution, this is what you compare with. That's why it is called a schedule baseline, guys, okay? So schedule baseline will look like something like this, okay? We won't have columns like actual start date or actual finish date. No, we only have one start date and one finish date because this is our promise, okay? Now, this list, this table will be static, okay? We won't change this table, this promise, unless through formal change control process, guys. Like example of updating this schedule baseline, for example, stakeholder forgets a requirement, okay? Meet project, instead of, for example, 500 parking lots for hospital, they need 550 parking lots. Now, you as a project manager and your team evaluate this request, okay? You find the impact, you do impact analysis, okay? If we execute this request, how it will affect our cost, our schedule, our resources, our risk. This is called impact analysis. And then you write down these findings and provide it to the change control board. And if they approve this request, like increasing 50 parking lots, then you update the scope baseline, and of course your schedule will change. So you will update schedule baseline also. Your cost will change. We're going to have a document called cost baseline. You have to update that cost baseline also. So schedule baseline is official promise. It's a frozen dates. It won't change unless through official integrated change control process. Okay, guys? Now, Nav, you said the first output was project schedule. The second output is a schedule baseline. Is there a difference between these two? Yes. So what's the difference, guys? Guys, project schedule, the previous output, the first output we talked about, is living, updated view of reality, okay? But the schedule baseline is frozen, approved reference. So let's elaborate with an example. Guys, let's say a delay happens in a project, and we know this delay is temporary. We update project schedule, okay? But we won't update project baseline. We only update project baseline through formal change channels, but project schedule always reflect the reality, what's going on with the project. So it is a document that is being updated constantly based on realities, based on current performance of the project. This is the difference, okay? So schedule baseline is only the approved dates. It contains the planned start and finish dates that were officially approved by sponsor, okay? It is frozen, meaning you cannot change it unless a change request is approved. Columns you usually see in the schedule baseline are baseline start, baseline finish, and then baseline duration. This never changes unless you re-baseline. But project schedule is the real live updated schedule you're working with, okay? It contains the current dates based on actual progress. So to wrap it up, guys, we have one document called project schedule, okay? It's a living document. It shows the actual dates, okay? Because our project is performing and we have actual progress, okay? Based on this progress, this project schedule shows and reflect the real numbers. But schedule baseline is a frozen document, okay? This does not show the current progress or current performance. This is baseline, our reference point, okay? We compare our current progress, we track performance and compare it with this baseline. Baseline is a promised dates, guys. But project schedule shows the reality right now, okay? What's the actual finish date? What's the actual start date? This is the difference between project schedule and baseline. Awesome. Now, to clear things up, let's have a mini question. Let's get it done. Mini question, my favorite part. You are a project manager leading a program where multiple teams provide monthly progress updates. During the latest review, you notice several teams reporting that they are on track, yet the integrated schedule shows the final milestone slipping by 3 weeks. When you ask for clarification, different teams reference different versions of the schedule. Stakeholders now want to know whether the project is actually behind or whether the issue is caused by inconsistent reporting. What should you do first? A. Ask each team to send their latest working schedules so you can merge the most recent information. B. Hold a meeting to realign everyone on the new expected completion date. C. Review the approved schedule baseline to confirm the true planned dates before assessing any variance. And D. Updates the schedule with the team's latest numbers to reestablish a current forecast. Good question, guys. Pause the video, get me the right answer, and then unpause it, please. 30 seconds, okay? Not more. Go get it done, please. Now, let's solve it together. Let's go line by line. Let's learn something from this question. It says you are a project manager leading a so you have multiple teams, guys, okay? During the latest review, you notice several teams reporting that all of the teams are saying, hey, we are on track. But integrated schedule, what's integrated schedule? It is just one big schedule that includes all schedules of different teams. Okay, integrated schedule means if there are like 3 teams and each has one schedule integrated, merge all of the schedules into one big schedule. One big schedule shows that the milestone, the project finish date, is slipping by 3 weeks. Now, the question is telling team members are referring to different versions of a schedule. So team members are comparing their current performance because when you're reviewing a schedule, guys, you compare your current performance, your current progress with this baseline, with this reference point. You compare it with something, and that is baseline. And when we're talking a schedule, that baseline is called schedule baseline, that promised dates, okay? Not project schedule. So these current schedule data is recorded in project schedule, but promise list is in schedule baseline, okay? You notice the question states that there are multiple versions of this. It is not acceptable, guys. It is just one project, guys. The project needs to have one schedule baseline. We shouldn't have multiple versions. If that's okay to have multiple versions, but everybody needs to use the latest version of schedule baseline or scope baseline or cost baseline. Okay? Everybody needs to compare their performance, their current progress, with one single reference point, one single schedule baseline. That's why option C is the correct one. And remember, guys, it says, what should you do first? It is asking you as a project manager about your first action. As I told you before, there's a difference between first action and best action. Okay, first action means the first step you take. The first step is, hey, review the approved schedule baseline to confirm the true planned dates. Because the question is saying there are multiple versions. Guys, we need to make sure we have a reliable schedule baseline first, and then we compare the current performance with that baseline. You need to review and make sure, okay, there's only one version. What are the true planned dates? Are all team members using one true planned dates? If they are not, you need to gather them and teach them, align everyone, okay? Shared understanding of the right or true planned start and planned finish dates. Okay, team members shouldn't use different versions, different planned dates. That's your job, guys. Okay, you are project manager. You need to coordinate different teams. Okay, if teams are using different versions, it's your fault. I'm sorry, but it is your fault. Let's read the description, guys. The schedule baseline is the official approved version used to measure performance. You cannot determine whether slippage is real until you compare actual progress against the baseline, not team-created working versions. PMP requires identifying variances against the baseline before initiating corrective or preventive actions. Okay, there will be some differences. By variance, I mean differences between the actual data and the planned data. That's okay. That's not okay, actually, but variances happen, guys. But you need to make sure you have reliable reference point first. Everybody needs to use one single reference point or baseline. Why A is incorrect? A says ask each team to send their latest working schedule so you can merge. No, we don't do that, guys. Merging working schedules spreads inconsistency and hides the true planned commitments. Option B says hold a meeting to realign everyone on the new expected completion date. Realigning dates before understanding variance is premature and may mislead stakeholders. Guys, you need to make sure you have true planned dates first and then realignment happens, okay? That's why the question says, hey, what's your first action? This option B could happen after option C. That's a cool idea to realign everyone. But first, the first action is option C. Option D says update the schedule with the team's latest numbers to reestablish a current forecast. Updating the schedule without consulting the baseline corrupts the ability to measure actual performance. We do not, guys, the first action is reviewing the baseline. Let's make sure that our plan dates are true, and then we can realign everyone. Then we can integrate raise a change request to update baseline if necessary. This happens after reviewing the baseline and ensuring that, hey, okay, these planned data are correct data. Awesome. Now let's continue our outputs for develop schedule. We had two outputs so far: project schedule, which is a living document, and schedule baseline, which is our frozen document, our promised schedule data to our stakeholders. Awesome. Let's continue our mini lessons with two remaining outputs. Let's get it done. Now, let's continue our mini lessons with the last two outputs of develop schedule, guys. The first one is schedule data. What's schedule data? Those supporting and extra details about the schedule of each activity. What are those extra details? For example, assumptions, constraints, contingency buffer. These are all extra details, okay? For example, guys, in our schedule data, by the way, schedule data could be a separate document, okay? A document called schedule data, or remember activity attributes, which included extra details about activity. Schedule data could be part of that activity attributes. Okay, it really depends on project manager and their preferences. If they want to store these extra details as a separate document or include these in, for example, in a schedule baseline document or activity attributes document, it really depends on you. But the concept is that, hey, we have a document that could be stored anywhere as schedule data. These are extra details, assumptions, constraints, contingency buffer we make about project schedule or activities schedule, okay? For example, flooring has 2 days contingency. ICU painting activity has 3 days of float. Drywall requires fire-resistant material, and delivery is assumed on Jan 2nd. These are assumptions. The float, contingency buffer, these are extra details that relates to the project's schedule or activities schedule, guys. Okay, these are called schedule data. How does this schedule data helps us? For example, this way, if a delay, for example, happens, the PM can check the schedule data to know what assumptions were made and how much float or reserve exists, so they could take corrective action based on those schedule data. The next output is project calendar, guys. Guys, we have 3 calendars, okay? Let's solve it once for all, okay? We have 3 calendars. Number 1, corporate calendar, okay? This project is for a corporation. For example, corporate calendar says, hey, all employees work Monday to Friday and 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and weekends are off and like formal holidays are off. So this is corporate calendar. The next calendar is called resource calendar. What's resource calendar, guys? It's a calendar that shows what resources are available when. By resources, I mean people, material, equipment, okay? What resources are available when. This is called resource calendar. Now, The third type of calendar is output of this process, which is called project calendar. Project calendar merges, integrates, or mixes those two previous calendars, guys. Corporate calendar and resource calendar. For example, guys, our corporate calendar says, hey, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and holidays are off. Resource calendar, for example, says, hey, flooring crew available Monday to Thursday, and crane is unavailable in February. Okay, now we mix these two data, the corporate calendar and resource calendar, and our project calendar will be like this. We combine the results, and project will run Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and like no weekends. Flooring tasks only scheduled Monday to Thursday. Based on our resource calendar, we know that our flooring crew is available Monday to Thursday, and crane work or crane related activities are pushed to March. Okay, this final calendar with project specific constraints applied becomes part of the output of developed schedule. This is called project calendar, guys. So let's wrap it up. How many outputs did develop schedule process had? 4 outputs. Number 1, the project schedule. Number 2, schedule baseline that promised dates. Number 3, schedule data, supporting extra details. Number 4, project calendar, which is our project specific constraints and dates and days. Okay, awesome. Look up there, guys, schedule management in predictive projects. What phase? Planning phase. What process? Develop schedule process. And welcome to mini summary. What exactly we do, guys? We started off with working on our schedule network diagram, okay? We applied the first tool and technique called CPM, critical path method. We found different paths available on our schedule network diagram, and the longest path is called critical path. And we know that activities that are on critical path has total float of 0, so we cannot delay start of those activities. Those activities are vital for us, okay? We take good care of them. Then, like we applied forward pass. It's a concept in critical path method. What's forward pass? Remember those colorful squares we had in a schedule network diagram? By applying forward pass, we find early start and early finish date of the all activities. Okay, we start from left to right. We move from left to right. Start with activity A and ends with the activity whatever, activity Z, for example. Okay. So we find ES and EF of all of the activities. Then we applied backward pass. What's backward pass? We start from the last activity and go to the first activity, right to left. We find late start and late finish and total float of all of the activities. What's total float, guys? Total float is the flexibility, slack, that room that each activity have, so it won't affect the project's finish date. Okay, it's a time that we can delay start of an activity that it won't affect the project's finish date. Then we applied and used resource optimization techniques. What was resource optimization technique? Whenever you face resource problem, for example, resource overbooking or over allocation, you apply one of the resource optimization techniques. We had resource smoothing and resource leveling. What's resource leveling, guys? Resource leveling means we adjust the schedule. Okay, we move the start of an activity to later time. If we know it will affect project's finish date, but we do it to protect our resources because our resources have limited ability to like function. Okay, what's resource smoothing? Resource smoothing means adjusting activities start day in their float. Okay, we apply resource leveling on critical path activities that are on critical path, and we applied resource smoothing on activities that are not on critical path, the activities that have some float, so we could play around. Okay, these were resource optimization techniques. Then we had schedule compression techniques. We had fast tracking and we had crashing. What's crashing? Crashing means adding more resources. Guys, whenever sponsor comes to you and say, hey, we want to finish the project earlier, do something, you apply crashing or fast tracking. Crashing means adding more resources. When we add more resources, it means our cost increases. What's fast tracking, guys? Fast tracking means overlapping activities, okay? So we start the successor activity before the predecessor activity finishes. We overlap works. And fast tracking increases the quality risk. The activities may need rework, okay? So these were schedule compression techniques. Then we had what if analysis. What's what if analysis, guys? What if analysis tested different scenarios or delay or resource scenarios to see how they would affect the schedule, okay? And these findings are provided to project manager to decide, to make an informed decision. Then we had Monte Carlo simulation, which showed the probability of finishing by certain dates based on risk and uncertainty, okay? We give lots of inputs to our software or Monte Carlo, and it runs tens of thousands of simulations and gives us and say, hey, it is 50% chance that you can finish it by June, for example, 20th, but 95% chance that the project will finish on July 1st. Okay, so you plan on 95% probability, not the 50%. That's how Monte Carlo helped us. And the other tool and technique is called what? It's called CCM, critical chain method. What's critical chain method? Critical chain method has two characteristics, guys. When we do critical path method, okay, we assume that the resources are unlimited. There is no limitation in resources. But critical chain method is critical path method considering the resource calendar, okay? We consider availability of resources. It is more realistic. And also, one more thing about CCM, critical chain method, is instead of applying buffer, contingency buffer to each activity, we apply one big buffer to all of the activities. These two are main characteristics of CCM. Now, as a result of applying all of these techniques, we came up with 4 outputs. Number 1, project schedule. It's a living document, okay? It includes start date and end date of all of the activities. And it shows, project schedule shows the current performance, the actual data related to schedule, guys. The next output is schedule baseline. This is approved version of our schedule, okay? This is reference point. Our stakeholders or sponsor approves this schedule. And we promise to those stakeholders that start date and finish date of our project will be these dates. We promise you that this will be frozen document, reference point. The difference between project schedule and schedule baseline. Project schedule is living document. It is constantly updated with the actual current data of the start date and end date. But the schedule baseline is the promised version, okay? It's the approved and frozen document. The other input is schedule data. It's a document that includes extra details about the schedule related information like schedule assumptions, constraints, the contingency buffer of activities, the float of activities. Schedule data can be stored as a separate document or in activity attributes. And the other one is project calendar. Project calendar defines working days, hours, and holidays that influence when tasks could be performed. Okay, it mixes the corporate calendar with the resource calendar and gives us the project specific calendar. Now, you as a project manager, when doing develop schedule process, you apply one important principle. And that principle is called recognize, evaluate, and respond to system interactions. Why this principle, guys? Remember, developing the schedule is all about understanding how the entire system of work fits together, okay? So activities, durations, resources, risk, dependencies, buffers, calendars, constraints, assumption, deliverables. When the PM builds the schedule, every change creates a ripple effect, okay? Moving one activity affects the critical path, resource availability, flow, dates, other factors, okay? This is pure system behavior, not isolated tasks. This is how you as a project manager, you consider whole system together, okay? Awesome. This was a very long mini summary, I guess. And I think this process deserves some practice tests. So let's get it done. You are managing a software upgrade project. The following activities, their durations and dependencies are listed. What is the critical path? So we have a table with 3 columns. We have activities name, then predecessors, and duration of each activity. Option A says path ABD is the critical path. Option B says ACE. Option C, ACD, and option D, ABDE. Now, please pause the video. Try to draw the schedule network diagram for this dependency log. Guys, it's just only 5 activities, okay? It is easy to draw the the schedule network diagram, but remember, please consider those predecessors, okay? And the fact that activity E's predecessor is only activity C, not B, okay? Consider this when drawing. You can pause the video, go ahead, try to solve it. And now that you have unpaused, guys, here's the schedule network diagram for this dependency log, okay? So we start off with activity A, then we branch out into 2 activities, B and C. As you can see in the both row number 2 and row number 3, activity B's predecessor is activity A. Activity C's predecessor is also activity A. So activity A is here, B, C, okay? Activity A is predecessor of both of B and C. Now, let's go to row number 4. Activity D, we have activity D, okay? Where do we put that node or box of activity D? Just in front of activity D, it is mentioned that activity B and C are predecessors of activity D. So activity B and C should merge to activity D. We put activity D's box or node in the middle, then we connect B to D and C to D. Let's go to the last row, guys. Activity E's predecessor is only activity C, not B, okay? So we put activity E just in front of activity C, and we connect activity C to E with this arrow. And this will be the schedule network diagram of this dependency log. Now, let's find our paths, guys. How many paths are there? There are 3 paths. Path number 1, A, then B, and D. Okay? Path number 2, A, C, and D. Path number 3, A, okay, then C and E. So the last activities are D and E. It is not just only E, guys. Okay, this is very, very important. In our examples in mini lessons, there were only 1 last activity. But here, this example shows us that there could be more than 1 last activities. Okay, this is a very good question that uncovers this reality. Now, let's add up the durations. For path A, B, D, the duration will be 3 plus 6 plus 2, which equals to 11 days. For path ACD, it will be 3 plus 4 plus 2, which equals to 9 days. And for path ACE, 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals to 12 days. The longest duration is the critical path. So our path is ACE. Awesome. And one fact, guys, activities A, C, E, all of them has total float of what? 0. Thank you very much. Let's get the next one.